welcome everyone to the Electric Coaches channel. Since the Bull City Brawl back in November, I've been going through my collection. I pulled out some of my my boards that I've collected over the decades of my time in the hobby, and I decided to do a video on the different types of boards that exist in the hobby of electric football. Now, some of the videos you've watched in the past from my channel, the Electric Coach channel, you've seen mostly custom boards. Those boards were 4 feet in length, and some boards were 6 feet in length. They were 30 inches in width, what have you. Those are custom boards. But the boards I'm going to talk about in this video are the traditional boards that the game was founded upon. And the current board you're looking at right now is the first board that Tudor had created when they first came up with the game back in 1947. This board right here is the Model 500 board. This particular board wasn't made in 1947. This board is probably a 1950s board, and one of the ways that you know that is by the writing that's right here on the edge of the board here. This writing is in white. So see, the boards from 1947, 1948, the writing was yellow. And as you can see, it's a rather small type of board. The whole board is in the frame of this camera right here. So this board right here was the beginning of Tudor electric football. Each board type, it came with 22 figures. And the figures, I'm going to put that in a different video. So mainly I'm going to just talk about the boards here. The length of the board is 500. Overall is 26 inches. All right, that's from the very edge of the board, from here all the way up to the other end. So that's 26 inches, and the playing surface within the frame of the board is 24. That's from the back of the end zone, okay? And the width total was 15 inches. And the playing field was 13. So you can see it's not much room here to play on. But the figures that came with this board, they were smaller one-dimensional figures, okay? This board, Model 500, first board from Tudor. I'm going to peel this one away. So now the board you're looking at here is another Model 500. This board was formed in the mid-1950s. This board took EF all the way into the 1960s. And if you look at the size of the board, you can see these two edges right here. They're the same length. Not much difference, except the field pattern is different. A lighter green, and the hash marks are now in the middle of the field here. Back in the 40s, they didn't do the hash marks in the middle of the field, okay? Let's put down this 1947, 48 board here, 50 board. This board also is still a Model 500, all right? And here's another Model 500, okay? And this board takes me back. Notice it's the same size, by the way. Same construction, same build, same dimensions, right? And I said this board takes me back. Why? Because when I first started playing electric football back when I was 9 years old, this was the model of board. This pattern was given to me by my aunt. This board right here, when I saw this board on eBay, I snatched it up. Because a long time ago, in my teen years, I sold my board to a younger friend of mine because I thought I was done playing. So I sold the board I had to him. Then later when I came back at a hobby, I digress for a moment. I found this board on eBay and I snatched it up. I found it for like 20 bucks. Yeah, Model 500. This is the board I started with in my first years in the hobby. So again, the Model 500 board, again, started from 1947, went into the 50s, and Tudor brought this model of board back into the hobby in the late 70s. If you look at the edge here, you see the name Tudor Games Electric Football. Okay? This is from the original Tudor company. All of these boards are, by the way. We're going to move this board away. And you see, this is the Model 500 from the 50s. All right? So I brought in my board I started with when I was a kid. Okay? I threw that one in there. All right? So here's the Model 500 that went through the 50s, okay, and somewhere in the 60s. I don't have the exact dates, the exact years when the Model 500 board was discontinued, and then somewhere along the way it picked up again when I came into the hobby. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this one away. Okay, this board I'm bringing in is the Model 615 board. If you look right here on the edge here on the wall here, you see the Tudor name and the NFL name there. And if we go along the sideline wall here, you see Tudor NFL, you see football written there. Okay. Now this board is from 1970 to about 1974. There's two things that tell me that this board is from that era. Number one, by 1970, the AFL and the NFL had merged. So for all of my younger viewers out there, you may not know that the NFL, the AFL were two separate leagues back before 1970, okay? So when those two leagues merged, the AFL, NFL, all of the AFL teams, they became the AFC, right? Just a little history for you before I go further into this board, all right? So teams like the Raiders, the Oilers, the Chiefs, Broncos, Dolphins, what have you, right? They became the AFC. And all of the original NFL teams, that being the Vikings, the Saints, the Eagles, Cowboys, 49ers, what have you, they became the NFC, so it was two conferences. And the divisions back then, it were only 3 divisions. You had the East, West, and the Central, okay? Now, there weren't 28 teams yet in 1970 because the Buccaneers, if my history serves correct, Buccaneers and the Seahawks weren't franchises. weren't franchises yet. They came late. I think the Seahawks came in 1971, if my history serves correct. Okay. You see here the NFL emblem. This is the old NFL emblem that represents the number of teams they had back then. You have this is 25 stars in this emblem right here. So each star is supposed to represent, I believe it's a different team, if my history serves correct. I mean, somebody out there correct me if I'm wrong. But there were two teams that were missing. That was the Seahawks and the Buccaneers. Okay. Another thing that tells me this board was from between 1970 and 1974 is because the goalpost hole is in the center of the end zone. See, the NFL didn't move the goalpost to the back of the end zone until after 1974. Okay? So this board, the layout of this board tells me that this board was from between 1970 and 1974. All right? So it's going to do some dimensions real quick. The playing surface is 29 inches in length from back of end zone to the back of the other back of the end zone. And the sideline is 15 inches from wall to wall. All right? Now these 600 model boards, unlike your 500 model boards, all right, like the 500 model, remember it was one piece of sheet metal. This 500 model barely fits inside of here. It was one piece of sheet metal, right? Well, the 600 board is a combination of two parts. This is a 615, by the way, okay? The 600 model boards are a combination of one piece of sheet metal for the field itself, okay? And it's mounted into this frame right here. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to show it to you. So let me grab it up, turn it over. Okay. Here it is. And you see right here, here's the transformer that vibrates the board. Same technology from 1947. Still holds true today. There's the power switch, right? And here is the playing field. This is the sheet metal where the playing field is. And if you look along the sides here, you'll see rivets. See if I can bring it in a little closer for you. Right along here where my thumb is, you'll see rivets, the little rivet holes there where the playing field is mounted inside the frame. The sideline walls is the frame here, see? So yeah, the 600 model, this is pretty much the construction and layout of the 600 model boards. It had that high wall that you see. Flip this back over. Right? It's this wall that made these 600 model boards really cool. See, the wall was here, and sometimes when we passed, sometimes the ball would skip, and it would get caught right down inside the little crack there, the little space in there between the playing surface and the wall. Sometimes, yeah, those were good times. That was better than losing the ball somewhere in the room. Well, this is the model 615 board. Now this model is the 660 board. Okay? Now this model came from the mid 70s all the way into the early 80s. And one way we know that, right? Right here in the end zone, the goalpost hole is all the way in the back of the end zone. And if you notice the sizing of this board, this one is a little bit longer and a little bit wider. We check the length from the back of the end zones. We have 32.5 inches in length. And we have 16 inches of width from sideline to sideline. Now this was the board that one of my friends had back when I had that little 500 board I showed you. Let me go back and get that. Stand by for a moment. Just moving things around here. Now here's the board I had when I was a kid. You see that? It fits right inside the 660 all the way around. I can just set it right in there, no problem. Now, I'm playing on this, and my friend, he had that. So, it was a treat to go over his house and play on his 660 back in the day. Okay? It was a real treat playing on this one. And again, all the boards, they came with figures. All right? And you look at the side, the back of the end zone, this says Super Bowl, right? And if you look at the sideline wall, you see Super Bowl and you see NFL. See, that's what's written on the side of this board. This board right here was, back in the day, the sweetest board to have. Okay, this was the sweetest board to have back in the day. All right, this is the model 660. This board was made in the mid 70s, around like 1975, 1977, something like that. And then it took the hobby all the way into the early 80s. Okay, so let's pull this one away. Now, again, I'm gonna get to the board you're looking at right now. I'm gonna get to that. But I need you to hold on for a minute. All right. That one is a classic board there. Let me go over here and grab this one. Okay. Now this board right here is the model. This board is the model 600. Now this board was my first Super Bowl board. So I graduated up from that tiny 500 board that I showed you earlier, right? Let's go get that again. I had this in the beginning, okay? And after, when I demonstrated to my family that I was going to play with it, they said, you know what? Let's go ahead and get them the big one. Mind you, this board back in the day with the teams and all of its accessories, it cost only $20 at Discount Mart, just outside of the shopping center outside of DC. I digress for a moment. All right. So this model is the 600 model. Now the original 600 model goes all the way back to the early 1960s. Okay. And what Tudor had done with this 600 model right here, they took the same construction that you saw with the Model 500, using only a single piece of sheet metal. All right, you see the motor right here, the same technology. Here's the power cord, there's the motor, single piece of sheet metal, right? They took that same concept from the Model 500, and they brought that back to this newer Model 600 board. And this board went from 1981 all the way into the 1990s. And its dimensions, 32.5 in length from back of the end zone, all right? And across the sidelines, 16 inches, about the same width as the Model 660. Now, there are a lot of other boards that Tudor made. They made a Model 645. They had a Model 613. Within that 600 series, the 645, I don't have one of those. But it's not much different than the 660 that I showed you. And the 613 is not much different than the that 615 board I showed you earlier. Okay? But this model right here is the newer Model 600. All right? And this was my first Super Bowl board. And when I got this, hey, I thought I was a pro. I had moved up from the college ranks. In fact, when I say college, that 500 board that I showed you, this one right here, we called this the college board because of its smaller size. And the players were just plain red and yellow. Okay? I digress for a moment. And then when you got a Super Bowl board like this one, or if you had that 660, the one I just showed you earlier, you was a pro, and you were playing with pro teams, right? Because these Super Bowl boards, they came with NFL teams, okay? All right. So let's put this down. I'm gonna grab this 600, and as you see on the side walls here, you see electric football, as it's written, electric football. And on the end zone, you see Super Bowl, right? This is the Model 600. Let's put this down. Now, the more you're looking at now, this board is a classic. Like, you know how you got guys who collect, vintage automobiles? Well, in this hobby, we got guys who collect boards. We got guys who collect figures from different eras, stuff like that, right? Well, I have a board collection. And this board right here is the 620 model from Tudor. All right? This board was formed in 1967. How do I know that? Number one, the goalpost holes are in the center of the end zone, right? So that's how we know that this is an earlier board. This is when the NFL, remember how I told you that the goalposts were in the middle of the end zone back in the day? Well, they're like that on this board. Also, Tudor didn't make many of these boards, especially with the figures. They didn't make many of the figures because the story is that when the manufacturer, Tudor didn't own the rights to the molds for the figures, and they didn't. The figures were bigger, all right. So because the figures were bigger, they had to make the bigger board to accommodate the size of the figures. They couldn't play on the 500 anymore. And the 600 board I think it was a bit smaller. I don't have a 600, but I think it was, all right. Well, Tudor had made the larger figures, but they didn't own the rights to the molds, so they weren't able to continue to make those figures. The molds were owned by the sculptors out in Hong Kong who were making the figures. So they got rid of those molds and they went back to a standard size figure. So as a result, Tudor didn't make any of these larger 620 boards. Okay. The size of this board, all the way, the end zone, from back of the end zone is 35.5 inches. And from sideline to sideline, 18 inches. So this board, you got a little bit more play, right? That's why this board is probably the most classic board in the game, because it wasn't that many of them that was made, right? The construction is the same as the 660 and that 615 I showed you, with the sheet metal being connected to the frame of the board, right? The history of this board when it was manufactured, I want you to look at the sidewalls here. You see the team names, right? You see Giants, Rams, Packers, Vikings, Saints, 49ers, right? Let's go on the other side here. You see the NFL name, to the NFL. You come all the way around. You see Eagles, Steelers, Browns, Cowboys, Redskins, all right? Of course, today the Redskins are, the name Redskins is defunct. They're the Washington football team, right? But guess what? You don't see the names like Raiders, Vikings, Chiefs, who were the Texans before they became the Chiefs, right? You don't see the Broncos name on here. Reason why? Because at the time when the NFL had the contract, there were 2 pro football leagues. So for those guys, or for those fans out there on my channel, you might not be old enough, but pro football had 2 leagues back in the 60s. All right? So the NFL had the contract with Tudor. The AFL wasn't a part of that contract. So as a result, their names, like the Raiders, the Oilers, Bengals, especially the Bengals, because they came later with the AFL. Those names aren't listed on the border of this board because they were part of the American Football League and not the National Football League. That was before the NFL AFL merger. Okay? So that's why this board, to me, is a very special board. It's got a lot of nostalgia, a lot of history behind it. And again, this board is very rare. I'm going to start tweaking my bases. I'm going to start using this board to tweak my bases on. But before I do that, right, there's some, I have to tune this board up. That's the beauty of the 600 model board. Because remember how I showed you the bottom side of the board, right? How the sheet metal is joined. And what you're looking at right there, that's my custom board right there, right? That custom board was inspired by the previous boards I just showed you. Okay, I digress for a moment. Let me move this 620 around a little bit and go back to the underside of it again. Remember how I showed you the bottom edge, the underside here, and how it's mounted inside the frames, inside the frame of the board? Well, when you tune a board, moving into something else now. Like I said, this board has to be tuned up. I'm going to run it for you before I start tuning it. Here's the edge of the board, the sideline wall, the end zone wall, what have you, okay? Right here, all the way around the board. We tune this board using clips like these. These are large paper clips, okay? And we find the sweet spot and we put the clip on the board like so. And that tightens the board here, all right? Because these 620s, when they were made with a little bit of play in them. See? So let me flip this over. Flip back over, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to run this board for you a little bit, and I want you to hear how it sounds, without tuning it yet. All right? See, this is my custom board is also a workbench. All right? Now, when I tap the board, there's play in it. So you want your board tight. See, and these 620 boards, 660 boards, they tend to be a little loose from time to time. All right? Okay, so I'm gonna run this board. I want you to hear this. You hear that rattle? That blah. It's not a good sound. All right, watch this. I'm gonna run it again. Watch this. Hear that? Hear that? See here how it smooths out when I grab it right here? I let it go. Hear that? See, that's the sound. Hear that? Watch this. You hear that? You hear that rattle sound? We want to get that sound out of there. And we use these, like I said earlier, use these paper clips, and we clamp them to around the bottom edge on the underside of the board. And then of course we take the arm off, so only the clip is left, right? So what I'm gonna do here, before I close this video, I'm gonna do a little bit of tuning of this board, all right? So I'm gonna unplug it, because we gotta flip it over, all right? We're gonna tune the board up, and we're gonna listen to it for a little while, and see how we can, what kind of sound, how we can make the sound better. Basically, we want a bassy rumble type of sound. You don't want that rattling sound like a can. You don't want that. You want a bassy type of sound, you see? A hum type of sound, all right? And when you get that, you get better performance out of your figures when they travel across the board, combined with the tweak of the bass, all right? So we're going to flip our board over. And again, that's my custom board, Electric Coach Park, right? I'm gonna flip this over. See, from time to time, you know, I like to, you know, go back home, you know, and play the way I used to back in my early days. Grab one of the old school boards and get on it, right? So now, we know that when we pinch, let me grab right here, I want you, because you can see it better here. When we squeeze right here on the sides, that tightens this area of the field right here, right? This is the playing field in here, all right, the underside of it. So I know that up here is where most of my trouble is, where most of the rattling is happening at, right? So I'm gonna take one clip, I'm gonna put one right there, all right? Got a whole box of them here. Got a box of 6 of them, all right? So I can do maybe 2 right here and 2 down here, and then put 1 on each sideline, right? But I don't want to keep you long, so I'm going to put both of these clips right here in this end zone right here, right? Let me lift it out. Push on that a little bit, see how it feels, okay? We're gonna put this clip right there like that. So remember, I'm doing it like this, right? See, I'm moving in a little closer here. See that? So we're gonna put this clip down here. That's gonna help tighten that board up a little bit. And you know, while I'm at it, let's go ahead and just I'm gonna do 2 more on the other end down here. All right. Take these out. Now you can get these clips from, you know, any one of your office supply stores. All right. These are the large clips, by the way. You gotta use the large clips because they open up wide enough to grab the outside frame of the board as well as that inside part, the playing surface part. So we're gonna put this clip down here, tighten up down there, and we're gonna put one right about here. Now, we gotta remove these little arms right here, see? Take that off, take that off. So now, because we don't want these extending out because it's gonna stand under the board. You don't want that. Take that off. Take this off. So what we're doing here is we're setting this 620 model board up to be tuned, right? You want to keep these, by the way. You don't want to throw these away. All right, so we're going to set these off to the side. All right. Okay. Make sure all our clips are in place. I basically randomly put them on, because as you tune the board, you're going to move these clips, slide them up and down the board until you find a sweet spot. But for the sake of this video, I'm just putting these clips on randomly now, because we already know that this area, this end of the board is where a lot of our trouble is coming from regarding the noise. All right. Now we're going to take our board out, flip it back over, right, and we're going to set the board in place here. Make sure nothing is under it. Get our switch. Let's run it, see how I sound. We gotta plug it in. Make sure you always plug it back in. It works better when you plug it in. All right. Hit the power switch. You hear it now, right? We're gonna turn it up. Hear that sound? A lot better. Hear that rattle noise? That rattle noise is gone now. You hear that when I turn it all the way up? But when I bring it down, right about there. So with some adjustment, I might be able to go a little higher. Bring it down. Still a little rattle. So when I grab the side, right here. Okay. You hear that? Turn it off. And we're gonna grab one of our figures here. I'm just gonna put them on here and run them, see how it looks. Smooth. So with a little bit more adjustment with the clips in the rear of the end zone and the sidelines right here. Let me hit it again. Right there. See that? I let go. Watch this. See that? Go right here. Right here. Hear that? Let go. Hear that? Just smooth it out. Okay. So you get my drift, right? You've seen some of the boards. This model right here is a classic 620 model from 1967, before the NFL-AFL merger. This board is very rare in the hobby of electric football, and I got one. So look, I don't want to keep you here any longer. I don't want to bore you with all the details of this game, right? So I'm going to let you guys go. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Mo. Thanks for watching.